Goldeneye serves as a successful studio revamping of a franchise that had begun to go stale. As the first Bond movie of the 90s, Pierce Brosnan's debonair 00 would serve as the vehicle for Bond's character well into the new millennium. While the sequels to Goldeneye weren't quite as successful, Goldeneye itself kicked off a cinematic revolution for the Bond films. The USSR had just collapsed a few years prior, taking the KGB and the Soviet villainy with it. Without the KGB, who was Bond to contend with on a global scale? All of the old enemies were dead. Goldeneye revived them, so to speak, in the form of ghosts. Not literal ghosts, of course, but Trevelyan was about as close as you could get. After believing his former partner, 006, to be dead, Bond becomes embroiled in Trevelyan's scheme to take over the world. Goldeneye is a bittersweet farewell to Bond movies whose themes centered on KGB operatives working in secret to topple the free world. It retained some of that charm from older Bond films like Dr. No and The Spy Who Loved Me, and combined it with an action-packed script that appealed to audiences across the fan spectrum. It also managed to introduce us to one of the most sadomasochistic villains of all time, Xenia Onatopp. Yeah, I saw this movie when I was 7. And I guess there are worse ways a guy could go. Welcome to Top 5 Firearms in Film. If seeing Bond driving a tank through the streets of Russia while chasing down his love interest is your thing, then you've probably come to the right place. Like and subscribe. So set your timer for 3 minutes instead of 6, and let's get this thing going.
Do you destroy every vehicle you get into?
Standard operating procedure. Boys with toys.
The fact that this gun is even on our list should come as no surprise. In fact, it's probably what most of you came here for. Almost immediately as recognizable as the number 007 is his sidearm of choice, the Walther PPK. While the Brosnan-Bond era would see the secret agent swapping out his Walther PPK for the full-sized P99 in the movie Tomorrow Never Dies, the PPK would be retained for the Goldeneye movie. Having made its debut in the form of the Walther PP, the full-size cousin to the Walther PPK in the movie Dr. No, the gun of choice for Bond was changed on a whim by Ian Fleming in the novels. This was after being told by a friend that the Beretta that Bond was carrying was considered a girly gun. Bond draws his PPK not long after making his way into the chemical factory with its iconic suppressor installed. While suppressors are not unheard of, small pun. While suppressors are not unheard of being used on smaller guns like the Walther PPK, typically they are fixed to the gun barrel by means of a barrel extension with screw-type threads along the outside. The suppressor is then spun on by hand and then cinched down tight. It's evident in this Bond film, and many others, that Bond's PPK doesn't have a threaded barrel extension. The film's armorers simply threaded the inside of the barrel. While this is fine for blank firing guns like those used in movies where nothing but hot gas comes out of the barrel, doing this on an actual PPK chambered in .32 ACP would reduce the barrel's diameter so much that the bullet couldn't pass through the silencer. It would catastrophically slam into it, plug the barrel, and cause a potentially deadly buildup of gas that could possibly blow up the gun. Because the walls of a barrel of a Walther PPK chambered in .32 ACP are so thin, it's almost impossible to thread them on an actual firing gun. Walther does, however, offer the PPK in a .22 caliber chambering, which some have claimed to have threaded internally with success, as the .22 bullet is smaller than the 7.65mm round. How do we know that Bond's gun is chambered in 7.65mm? His old friend Sikorsky tells us.
Walther PPK, 7.65mm. Only 3 men I know use such a gun. I believe I've killed 2 of them.
The reason for the absence of a barrel extension is probably because armorers and filmmakers deemed a barrel extension with external threads as too unsightly. Bond wields the PPK during the weapons factory infiltration at the beginning of the film, a scene that's set back in 1986. It's during this scene that Trevelyan is killed by Ourumov. Or, so we're led to believe. 9 years later, Bond encounters Trevelyan and is finally captured by Defense Minister Mishkin. During the interrogation, General Ourumov storms into the interrogation room and, like many Bond villains, taunts him rather than outright killing him. Ourumov tries to appeal to Minister Mishkin, recalling that he's seen the pistol once before. Mishkin is dismissive, insisting that Ourumov is actually the one who's the traitor. This results in Ourumov killing him and his guard, then trying to frame Bond for it. But oh no. You may punch him, you may shoot him, you may kick him and call him bad names, but never, ever take Bond's girl. This firearm is known colloquially as a crank-off, for many different reasons according to who you talk to. Used almost as extensively in Goldeneye as Bond's PPK, the AKS-74U is, much like Bond, a relic of the Cold War era. A modern design when it was conceived during its heyday back in the 70s, the AKS-74U, while sharing some of its nomenclature with the AK-74, is actually a complete revamping of the earlier Soviet assault rifle. With compactness in mind, the engineers who developed the AKS-74U cut down the AK-74's weight from 6.8 pounds to an airy 5.4 pounds, making the 74U an ideal close-quarters combat firearm chambered in a full-size rifle cartridge. Its folding stock and short barrel lends itself well to stowage and maneuverability in tight spaces, such as within a vehicle, or a corridor, or maybe a tank. Man, yeah, tanks. More carbine than rifle, the bullish appearance of the AKS-74U gives it an intimidating aesthetic, but not as intimidating as a tank. Though bearing some resemblance, it is distinct from the AK-74. The AKS-74U's shorter barrel length required a couple of key modifications to ensure reliability and controllability. The rifle was equipped with a specially designed flash suppressor and muzzle boost. Owing to these additions, the barrel has a distinct shape and look to it. Some people mistake the AKS-74U for a regular AK-74 that's been chopped and modified, as these are used frequently throughout the movie. For example, within the Chemical Weapons Factory facility, you can see that Bond's AKS-74U switches to an AK-74 when he shoots the lock that unleashes the barrels down on the unsuspecting soldiers. Flash suppressors are used to dampen the blinding effects of muzzle flash when shooting in low light conditions. Because of the short barrel, right at 8.1 inches, the noise from the intermediate rifle cartridge was deafening, so the flash suppressor was also built with sound dampening properties in mind. The muzzle boost itself ensures that the weapon will cycle reliably when fired. Muzzle boosters do not make bullets go faster, in spite of the name. What they essentially do is increase the pressure of gases behind a discharge round so that weapons' cycling systems will cycle properly. Because the barrel is so short on the AKS-74U, the gases that propel the round escape too quickly, and so they need a bit of a boost. Muzzle boosters are nothing new. In fact, they can be found on guns as early as the Vickers machine gun and the German MG-08, both in use during World War I. While they sound complicated, their design and purpose is very straightforward. All it is just the porting and redirecting of exhaust gases to give the reciprocating parts a little bit of a boost. Contrary to what some may think, Xenia Onatopp does not carry an AKS-74U towards the end of the film. It's actually a Norinco Type 56 made into a clone of a 74U. Jeez, take it easy, Onatopp. I think they make a medicine for that now. The 74U is still used by Russian police departments today, acting as a compromise between submachine gun and full-on assault rifle. If you look during some of the shootout scenes, you can also see that the magazines are made out of a material called Bakelite. And while Bakelite may sound like a delicious Russian pastry tart with a crispy, airy texture, it's not. It's just an early form of synthetic plastic. Much like Goldeneye is a more modern update of the Bond movies that preceded it, the Browning BDA is a modern update of the Browning high powers which came before. Updating old pistol platforms is nothing new. Just look at all the Colt 1911 clones that have been manufactured throughout the years. Several improvements were made to the Browning high power design, which itself was patented by John Browning of 1911 fame. Intended to compete with other pistol manufacturers in the 80s for the U.S. military standard sidearm, the Browning BDA was a sleek update to its predecessor, the venerable Browning high power. Unfortunately, it didn't quite make it through the stringent trials of the U.S. military, losing out to the Beretta that would become the M9. Sorry, John Browning. Unlike the Browning High Power, the Browning BDA has a double action feature where the shooter can pull the trigger while the hammer is down. Each shot after that, the hammer is cocked by the action of the slide so that the trigger pull is then single action. The Browning BDA's controls are also ambidextrous, with a safety decocker on both sides of the slide and the magazine release having the ability to be swapped to either side of the frame. Primarily chambered for the 9mm Parabellum, the production run of the Browning BDA started in the mid-80s and ended in 1999. While not completely revolutionary, it did boast better reliability with more modernized mechanics over the original Browning High Power. It is apparently Trevelyan's firearm of choice, as he carries it in suppressed form whenever he first encounters 007 in the weapons factory. He also frequently uses it during the shootout atop the satellite array and carries it in what appears to be a Kydex holster of some kind while he's walking around the second Goldeneye facility. Rest in peace, Arecibo Observatory. Rest in peace. After a bit of a kerfuffle between Bond and Trevelyan out on the satellite dish, Bond winds up with a BDM after shooting his former 00 partner. This looks like it probably hurt. Trevelyan fires his Browning until it runs dry, discarding it before the final showdown between him and 007. As you can see here, when Trevelyan fires his pistol, killing this lab worker towards the beginning of the movie, the Browning doesn't eject a spent casing. It's possible that this is because the gun wasn't a blank firing pistol, as is used for many scenes, owing to the proximity to the other actors. Blank firing pistols, while safe at certain distances, still discharge hot gases at high velocities. When used this close to a crew or an actor, it's best just to use guns that utilize flash paper for a bang, or computer-generated muzzle flash. There are also some CO2 variants that can cycle a weapon whenever you pull the trigger, to emulate the cycling of the slide of a firearm.
Lovely girl. Tastes like strawberries.
I wouldn't know.
I would.
It did not occur to me what this scene meant as a kid. At all. Innocent me thought maybe she was wearing strawberry chapstick when he kissed her. Is it a vehicle? Is it a gun? Well, to be fair, it's kind of both. Perhaps the one thing that stood out to me when I first saw Goldeneye as a kid was how awesome the tank chase scene was. Spurring on his Soviet chariot of War Iron Thunder, Bond rides the Russian T55 into the streets of St. Petersburg, charging after Natalia while demolishing buildings, pursuing police jeeps, and a trailer full of canned waters? Yeah, canned waters aren't really a thing where I'm from, so there's that. Did you know that every single one of these cans, flattened, destroyed, or completely intact, it didn't matter, had to be recovered when filming this scene was done? I'd like to think that Perrier at least kept a few of them as souvenirs. Can you imagine owning a can that was crushed by a tank in a Bond film? Yeah, that's dumb. The Russian-designed T55 tanks have been lauded as one of the most ubiquitous tanks in existence. While the one in the film has been mocked up to resemble the later T-80 tanks, the T-55 has comprised the majority of tank units for various countries around the world, from Yugoslavia to Sweden. The T-55 in Goldeneye has been modified with a false fiberglass hatch to serve as a driver's position for Bond as he wreaks havoc on unwary waterfront pedestrians. Liberal application by the filmmakers of dish soap allows him to drift that mammy-jammy, Fast and Furious style, through the thoroughfares of Russia's capital city. Look, if you didn't see this movie as a kid and fantasize about chasing down the girl you had a crush on while driving this tank, what are you doing with your life? The imposing main gun of the tank is a D-10 tank gun. It has a 100mm bore and is capable of firing projectiles over long ranges. It is most effective against light to medium armored vehicles. Since the history of this gun spans so many decades, various forms of munitions have been utilized with it. Some of the earliest high-explosive fragmentation shells used during the Second World War weighed in excess of 30 pounds, with laser-guided anti-tank missiles coming into use sometime later. If you were a world power shopping around for a bargain tank to use in your tank divisions, the T-55 chassis probably fit the bill. With a V12 diesel engine outputting 500 horsepower to move the 36 tons of armor-clad steel plating, it had enough low-end grunt to get you wherever you needed to go. The T55 itself topped out at around 30 miles per hour on even terrain, which was fast for the time, though its relatively cramped confines meant it could be a little uncomfortable for the crews that manned it. Last seen just before being destroyed after the armored Soviet Darth train slams into it, the agility, ruggedness, and straightforward mechanical operation make the T55 an endearing part of tank lore. Also, the Goldeneye game for N64 lets you run over people with it. General Ourumov simply looks like a villain. He carries himself in the way that you'd think an ex-Soviet officer at the heart of a global conspiracy would carry himself. That is, with grace, menace, and drunken poise. Although, even General Ourumov was taken aback by Xenia's ruthlessness and, excitability during the raid on the computer lab. Somebody needs to douse her with a hose. General Ourumov is the Russian general in charge of the secret weapons facility that Bond attacks back in 1986. He makes no qualms about killing one of his own men after the poor guy tries to shoot Bond through a cart full of volatile storage tanks. It's easy to mistake Ourumov's pistol for the Walther PP, the larger version of Bond's PPK, as the Makarov's design was influenced heavily by the German pistol. But Ourumov's pistol is, in fact, a Makarov PM, conceived by Russian firearms designer Nikolai Makarov. Nikolai survived the German invasion of the Soviet Union at the onset of the Second World War. At the time, he was a young man trying to establish himself in the field of engineering. He, alongside many other engineers, submitted their pistol designs to the Soviet government shortly after the end of the war in December of 1945. Made to replace the heavier, bulkier, and less reliable Tokarev TT-33 in 1949, the Makarov provided a bevy of features that made it the ideal sidearm of choice for close-quarters self-defense by members of the militia. One fundamental change was the addition of a safety, something that once upon a time military leaders deemed unnecessary as it might hinder a soldier's ability to bring the weapon into action. Of course, unintentionally putting a hole in your foot might also hinder your ability to bring a weapon into action as well. Given the Makarov's Soviet pedigree and its issuance to soldiers and police officers, it would only make sense that Ourumov would carry it. Utilizing a straight blowback design, the Walther PP's simplicity is evident in many functions and facets of the Makarov PM. The key to making the Makarov capable of firing the 9x18mm cartridge was to balance its sleekness and design against the weight of the slide. This is important in straight blowback designs, as it is the inertia of the slide that is critical to functionality. The weight of a straight blowback slide determines the delay in the action of the slide, allowing it to eject the cartridge at the ideal critical time during the cycling of the firearm. If the slide opens too soon, the case ruptures. If it opens too late, there's not enough gas pressure to reliably cycle the slide. Either situation can be considered a detriment to the weapon's functionality. Bakelite, once again, proves to be an integral part of Russian firearms design, as the grip panels of the Makarov are made of the plastic. It's the Makarov that Natalia uses to demonstrate her weapons handling proficiency while in the elevator at the Arecibo Observatory, as she loads the pistol and racks the slide. At some point, she makes her way to a helicopter and uses the gun to force the pilot close enough to Bond so that he can leap onto one of the skids, just before the satellite dish explodes. While the successive Bond films did not receive as much hype as Goldeneye, I think that's more of a reflection on the excitement that surrounds the build-up to a new Bond series and new Bond actors, rather than any kind of real reflection on the movies themselves. Although, windsurfing a wave onto the North Korean shore was a bit much. And a completely invisible car? I mean, I get it. Bond gadgetry centers on the cutting edge, but there's no way this is bulletproof while still remaining functional. And a hovercraft that literally... You know what? Never mind. Let's just agree that Goldeneye was the best Brosnan-Bond, with a couple of the others being close seconds. Also, If you've never seen this movie on a videotape, are you even a real Bond fan?